Hey everyone, this is Tracy Friedlander. You're listening to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. Today on the show, I have Lucas Meachem. Lucas is a world-renowned operatic baritone who sings with the Metropolitan Opera and opera houses all over the world. I had Lucas on today to talk about several things that are valuable to all musicians, the first of which is being visible on social media. But on social media, Lucas talks not only about his upcoming performances, but other topics that encompass his whole brand. We go into what that means in this conversation. You'll also hear his valuable point of view on music school and the important topic of tuition and student loans, and how he navigated barely any student loan debt after attending 3 different schools. Today's episode is the final episode of Season 3. Watch for Season 4 at the beginning of September. I have some fantastic conversations already lined up for Season 4 that I can't wait to share with you. In the meantime, check out some of the podcast episodes you may have missed this season, and I'll see you in a couple of months. I hope you have a fantastic summer. Before we start, I'd like to thank Fix Music for sponsoring Crushing Classical Podcast. Fix Music is your online resource for high-quality sheet music at great prices. There are some new offerings at Fix available that you'll want to know about. Now there's organ music, a large choral music selection, as well as orchestra parts that you would need for concerts and auditions. And now they are actively working with choral and orchestra directors to help plan seasons. So if you're a program director and you want some help on choosing pieces for your next season, contact Fix Music today through their website. And as always, free shipping on all domestic orders. Check out fixmusic.com for your sheet music needs and use the link in the show notes to receive 10% off your first order. Let's get started. Hey Lucas, how are you today?
Oh, I couldn't be any better. It's a fantastic day.
Awesome. I'm so glad to have you on Crushing Classical. I've been checking you out for a while, believe it or not, because I follow you on Instagram.
Well, thank you for being a follower.
Yeah, so I love what you do there. I love that you write a blog. It's so like, unfortunately, it's not as common that performers, especially people who are busy as you, keep up with social media and contribute like that and write to your audience in the form of blog posts with advice about what you do. And so tell me a little bit about that. How did you get started? Really, being committed to social media and stuff like that.
Well, let's separate the social media part from the blog part.
Yes.
So what sort of got me started on the blog idea was that I was doing a bunch of interviews and I got asked, for the most part, similar questions over and over again. And so I got good at those questions, but I always felt like I had a lot more to say and to sort of add to the operatic conversation. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, I found an outlet for that in my blog where I write about topics that are, I'd say the majority is to help young singers along and sort of pass along the knowledge that I've gained through sort of trial and error, lots of trial and lots of error, sort of getting into my career and sort of making it what it's become. And in that regard, I feel that I had a lot to say that finally I was able to sort of get off my chest and put out there in the world in the form of my blog. That's
awesome, because I know there are a lot of, there was one that I really liked of yours about how to handle love scenes. Because, as a non-singer and as an orchestra member, sometimes watching and going, how are they navigating that? Like, they have to act they love each other and stuff right now.
Yeah, especially in this day and age. It's a very slippery slope, and people have to handle it with respect for each other, which I think is the most important part. It's the most important part to that equation is respect for your colleagues and respect for their, body autonomy. And when you have that, it's hard. It's really hard to go wrong, and the biggest part of that is that you need to ask questions. And again, this is something that I'm never going to be asked in an interview is how do you kiss that person on stage and make it look realistic, Yeah. So it was surprised me actually, because I remember the title was called Man to Man, a guide to stage romance or something like that. Uh-huh. And I thought it would be written for men on how to approach, sort of being intimate on stage. And all the comments I got were from women saying, "Thank you so much. We needed this. We don't know how to broach this subject with our colleagues." And it honestly, it's probably my favorite blog that I've written, because I feel that it has had the most real world impact on the business.
That's great. It's so great to be able to contribute like that with stuff that you're not keeping it secret.
Yeah.
You know?
And opera does have this mystique about it. Like, it's the unknown. People don't understand it very well. And I kind of enjoy pulling the curtains back on that mystique a little bit, because I think there is still room for mystique in the world of opera.
Yeah, that's great. So did the blog sort of push you in the direction of being more social media savvy because you wanted to promote the blog, or how did it then move to that direction where you're active on Instagram with like really a lot of followers? You have like well over 9,000 followers, I think, maybe more now.
Yeah, I'm about 8,800 today, but who's counting?
No, who's counting exactly?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it became important to me when I realized that social media was here to stay.
Yeah,
And there were also varying degrees of importance to me. I thought that a post every now and again, just letting the world know what's up, and then sort of a personal post. Um, these things don't work well on a fan page. You have to be personal to a point, but you can't talk about politics or religion or
right.
basically things that you wouldn't talk about with your uncle or your aunt at Thanksgiving dinner. You
Yeah.
kind of stay away from it on the social media. So I'd say once I ended up making an actual fan page for Facebook and then my fan page for Instagram, rather than my personal page, once I differentiated between the two, that's when I got serious about social media. And I'd say if you're an aspiring opera singer out there and you're thinking about this sort of switch, that it does eventually need to happen, that you need to separate your personal from your professional. And so when that happened, I really took it seriously. And I think everyone can really benefit from having a social media presence as an artist, because it opens up your fan base to not just opera people. We're able all of a sudden to tell a story about opera and what opera is to people that might not understand what it is, or might have never even walked into an opera house before.
Right. Yeah, that's valuable. So yeah, I mean, I know that I saw a blog post actually of yours that really dove into the concept of brand and what that means for musicians. So can you tell us a little bit about what you think that means for you and for musicians in general?
Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about these things, I mean, first of all, as an artist, it's hard for me. It was hard for me to grasp these concepts in a way, because
Yeah,
I thought I sing pretty, I get jobs,
exactly.
and that's a beautiful way to think about it. But it is important that you have an audience and you create a fan base for your art, so that you have people there to appreciate your talent.
Yeah.
So what really sort of got me, going down the social media path, I I don't know. It's an interesting thing to talk about, because social media is so there's no tangible thing there. It's just this online presence that you have that's out there in the ether, and people are able to follow you that way. But the most important thing is that you have people that can now follow you that don't have to see you live in a performance. Back in the day, it was that you had to actually attend a performance, and your maximum reach for people was 1 to maybe 4,000 at the biggest opera houses per night that you happen to be performing.
Hmm.
Now your reach can be as much as you want. It could be 100,000 people in one post,
Right.
and all of a sudden it exponentially creates an additive that with which you can just reach a ton of people, and you don't have to be physically performing for them right that moment. Now, to get back to the brand question, so what is brand in opera, or what is brand period? And what I'd have to say is, in your Instagram account or your Facebook account, let's talk about my brand. My personal brand is myself. I'm an operatic baritone. So opera, baritone, maybe, and the blog. Those are probably my main brands. And
Hmm.
then you want to talk about sub brands, which are things that sort of pique other people's interest. It says I'm not just one dimensional. I have these other sub brands. My sub brands would probably be, definitely my wife, who happens to be a pianist,
Hmm.
my dog Timo, and probably my workouts and things that I do like that. And there can be other little things in there. But the point is that you need to simplify your account so that your audience knows what to expect every
Right.
time they go to you. That it's not always the same thing, but it's similar things that they know that they're going to go there and they're going to get a nice home cooked meal by mom. You know, they know what to expect. It might not be as good as a Daniel Boulud restaurant or something like that, but it's definitely something that they can expect every time they go back and get something similar that's going to be familiar to them.
Yeah, and you know what I like about yours is you're contributing to people who love to hear you sing, and then there's
Yeah.
also people who love to learn from you as a teacher. So you have like a multifaceted audience as well.
Yeah, that's sort of the blog aspect of it. That's
Yeah.
part of my brand is again, I never want to call myself a teacher because I'm a professional opera singer, and no, there's nothing wrong with teaching, and those two can be mutually exclusive, or they can come together. I know people that
Okay.
teach and sing, but right now at this point, I'm singing, and I do
Hmm.
like to help though, and I like to less call myself a teacher and more call myself someone with good ears who's been doing it a long time, you know. So
Right.
yeah, so I've become kind of, I don't know, I don't like the words masterclass or mentor, but I've become someone that likes to help young students if they write me questions, or if they want to work together, or so it's become a nice outlet for me to be able to sort of pay it forward to the next generation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was told that you have an interesting story about how you broke into opera, and I want you to tell that story because I think it's very unique.
Well, all right. I'll give you well, no, it's podcast. I can give you any version I want. I was about to say I'll give you the quick version, but
You can give me
yeah.
any version.
Well, okay. I'll just tell you how it happened because it pretty much stands on its own two legs. I was hired to go to Germany and sing a new production in Stuttgart, and I arrived there, and all of a sudden there was a strike, and I had 3 months free of being paid in Germany. So I arrived in Paris because what are you going to do in Germany but go visit your friends in Paris? And I was visiting my friend Paul Groves, a great tenor, and we ended up going out to sing karaoke that night. And again, in Paris, I didn't speak French at the time. I'd never been to Paris. It was my first time there, but I could sing some karaoke. I grew up singing karaoke. As a matter of fact, karaoke competition winnings helped me pay for my textbooks and food in college.
I
So
love it.
I could sing. I was good at karaoke, and so I get up and I sing karaoke, and brought the house down. It was great, and of course this was with a bunch of other opera singers who happened to be singing in Paris at the same time. It was with kind of a who's who now of opera. It was Simon Keenly's side. Susan Graham was there. Barry Banks. Um, Simon O'Neill, great Helden tenor now, and so we were all there hanging out, and karaoke happened. So fast forward a few
So
months.
what song? Wait, but back up
Yeah.
for a second because I'm thinking opera singers.
Uh-huh.
What are you singing at karaoke?
I'm singing R&B, and I think I sang Billy Joel Piano Man that night.
I love it. That's so
And
cool.
yeah. And Susie Graham, I think she sang Aquarius, and Paul Groves sang some Journey, and God, who else was there? I mean, I remember this specifically. Barry Banks sang Celine Dion, "My Heart Will Go On" in key and crushed it. Yeah.
Oh
Oh
man,
yeah. It was a great night. It was a great week.
that sounds like a
Yeah.
lot of fun. And all these random people were in the bar going, "Okay, these are opera singers singing." Like that must have
Yes.
been funny.
Yeah, the funniest thing about the whole experience to me, I mean, it was there were a lot of funny things, but I would go like a French person would go and sing. I mean, the thing is, you don't go to a karaoke bar unless you're okay at singing, especially this karaoke bar. And there were
Uh-huh.
some really good French singers there who sang American pop songs with perfect English. And I'd go
Wow.
up to them afterwards and say, "Hey, man, that was really great. It's just great voice." And anybody, désolé, je ne parle pas anglais. They didn't speak a word of English,
That
but their
is so
English diction
funny.
was perfect. Yeah.
So how did that launch you into more opera gigs?
So, okay, we fast forward a couple months here after Paris, and I didn't think anything of it. I went back to Germany, finished the gig, and it's October now, and the Chicago Lyric Opera ended up losing their baritone in a show that had three leads, which was the mezzo, and it was Susan Graham, the tenor, Paul Groves, all my Paris buddies, and the baritone pulled out 2 weeks before they were going to start rehearsals. And so Bill Mason, the general director of the Chicago Lyric at the time, called up Susan Graham and said, "We've lost our baritone. What do we do? Nobody knows this role." And she said, let me recommend a guy to you. I heard him in Paris. He's a really good baritone. His name's Lucas Meachem. He's like, "Oh, I've heard of the guy, but he just got out of the Young Artist program. Can he do it?" She said, "Yes, he can do it." She said, well, what did you hear him sing in Paris?" And she couldn't say, it was a karaoke night with a bunch of friends. She said, thought for a second and said, "It was American contemporary, and he brought the house down." So because of her recommendation and Paul Grove's recommendation, I ended up getting the job at the Chicago Lyric Opera. And after I debuted there, it sort of fast-forwarded. I was kind of on the fast track. It fast-forwarded my career
That's awesome.
a few years into the future. And I just want to put a caveat in here that it wasn't because I had the opportunity it fast-tracked my career. It was because I was prepared for the opportunity that it fast-tracked my career. There's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, because did you know that role already?
I did not. I had to learn it from scratch. I flew to New York City and worked on notes and rhythms with a coach. And then I flew to San Francisco and worked on the French and perfected that. And I showed up 2 weeks later, memorized.
Wow.
I ate, drank, and slept the opera Iphigénie en Tauride for 2 weeks and got it done.
Wow. Well, that's a crazy work ethic for someone who's really hungry to be in opera, I think.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I do memorize music quite quickly. I've always been one of these people that wants to work smarter and not harder. I think it's important to train yourself that way, to really be able to be quick about your musicianship, because in the future it will help you greatly.
How do you work smarter and not harder?
You don't sweat about the little stuff too much until you need to sweat about the little stuff. A lot of people start too detail-oriented when you sort of need to get it in your brain. But then again, some people learn differently. But it's all about knowing yourself and catering to your own abilities rather than the idea of somebody else's ability. Because some people try and teach you that you need to learn every single note in rhythm first, and then you can work on the diction. Some people think diction first and then the rhythm, or the melodic line. But none of that matters if it doesn't work for you. So you have to find what works best and do that.
That makes sense. That really makes sense. Because I think that sounds really daunting to me, to have to learn a part in a different language and have it memorized in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was daunting. But the thing is, I was kind of like, these Silicon Valley startups where they might not have a finished product yet, but they're going to take the money from the venture capitalists and say, "We're going to work on this and make it work." That's me. That was me. I said, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna make it work. And I know that by the time we open, I'm going to be the best guy you could have hired for the job.
Nice. And especially with that opportunity at Lyric, because what did that lead to next then?
Before I even opened, I was getting offered jobs in Rome and Madrid and San Francisco I already had because I was a Young Artist pro. But just it was more of a European scene really, and it opened up a lot of doors for Europe for me.
Awesome. So before that, I know previously we talked about school, and I know that I really love the way you look at school, because so many people just will go into debt, like crazy amounts of debt for their degrees. And I'm not from the music world or the singing world necessarily. I'm just from the instrumental side. I'm assuming there's a lot of similarities where, you go to undergrad and you go get a master's and then you keep going maybe because you don't feel ready or whatever, and you just take out loans. So tell me, where did you go to undergrad?
Well, my personal journey was a interesting one with lots of curves along the road, and I'd have to say that my ignorance of what I should do actually ended up helping me in the long run.
Yeah.
Because all I knew is I didn't have much money, and I wanted to go to school and sing opera, and that was kind of it, And I was thinking, oh, that's what I want to do. So the first college I went to, well, actually, I auditioned for 3 colleges coming out of high school. I auditioned for DePaul University in Chicago, University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and Appalachian State in the mountains of North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I ended up choosing the cheapest one of those, even though I was offered scholarships at all of them. And Appalachian State became the school I went to.
Mm-hmm.
And and really, it was all affordability that was the reason I went to school there. And I liked the voice teacher, so that was nice. But I liked a couple voice teachers at all the places. I was just happy to be able to go and study music.
Yeah.
So I finished at Appalachian State. Well, I left Appalachian State after 4.5 years, and I through again, slipping, tripping, falling, and lucking into, but being prepared to trip and fall and luck into an opportunity. I went to the Eastman School of Music on a full scholarship for
Excellent.
2 years. And then again, lucking into an opportunity I was prepared for, I received a full scholarship to go to Yale for 2 years. However, the big caveat behind all this is that I never received a degree from any of these universities. I mean, a semester away from a degree at App State, a semester away from a degree at Eastman, and a year away from an artist's certificate at Yale. So because every opportunity I had, when a better one came along, I jumped on the train.
Right.
Because in the arts, it's not about a piece of paper unless you want to teach. If you want to teach, absolutely get your doctorate, or get at least a master's degree. If that's the goal for you, then that's what you should do. And it's much more important to have the experience and to go as far as you can in the career. Like if I'm going to play basketball, I'm not going to stick around and get 3 degrees. I'm going to need to eventually try and get to the NBA,
Right.
And so it's the same thing in opera, where I just wanted to go places that I knew gave me the best opportunity to forward myself as a professional in the field. And that's what I always ran into a lot of people that really cared more for school than they did for a career in opera. It's like they wanted a career in opera, but they thought that being really good students would get them that. And in a way it helps because you're organized and everything, but I think singing is the most important thing.
Yeah.
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 Singing well.
Of course. Yeah. I know. Well, it's interesting though, because I think sometimes people turn down opportunities because they feel beholden to the degree, like they have to finish it or something.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like this point of view because it's like, hey, let's keep our eye on the ball where we're headed instead of, I mean, because school is part of your career, but it's not your career.
No, it's not, and there's a way to do it gracefully because I mean there are a lot of people that care about you in school. Your voice teachers, your coaches, your teachers, they're there and they do care about you. But at the end of the day, you're the only one that's going to make your career happen.
Yes.
And so you can't stay past your due date at a place, and even if that due date comes a little early, it's fresher to leave sooner than later.
Exactly.
It's too soon than too late. And yeah, it kind of just happened the way it did when the opportunities came. As long as you have upward mobility in your path, you're doing the right thing. See, if I'd gone from Eastman and then gone to Appalachian State, it would have been a downward mobility. Not because Appalachian State's not a great school, it's just the Eastman School of Music is one of the best music schools in the United States.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember on our last conversation, you had said something about negotiating your tuition. Did you?
Yes. Yeah. It was for Yale. When I got into Yale, I was at Central City Opera, and the audition everyone auditioned for Yale because they came through, and so I sang for them, and right on the spot they offered me a position. And going back to sort of my ignorance a little bit, I didn't really know that Yale had an opera program. So at the time, of course, and it's kind of cute, but also I should have known better. And that actually gets back to one of my other blogs where I talk about what I wish I had known back in school is that I should have asked more questions. But I felt that in asking questions, it made me look ignorant or stupid. And so luckily I've gotten over that. And now I know exactly what's going on. But so back to Yale. So I was offered a position at Yale, and I said, no, thanks. I'm done with school. I just finished Eastman, and I'm going to move to New York City with my friends and shake some trees and see what kind of opportunities fall out. And so they were kind of awestruck, and I was like, oh, anyway. So I went back to the place that I was living at, Central City Opera, with a bunch of other guys that were singing there, and they're like, man, I did good at Yale. I was like, yeah, I did pretty good. They offered me a position, a spot there, and they said, what? And I was like, that's awesome. I said, oh, but I told them no, and they could not believe it, and so eventually I told them yes, and at that point they'd given away a lot of their scholarship money,
Mm.
and it was less my negotiating skills, and more the fact that I had $0 in the bank and I didn't come from an affluent family.
Right.
That my all of a sudden my my inability to come up with the tuition made my negotiating skills very good, because I just said, no, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't come unless I have a full scholarship, because I wasn't willing also to take out a ton of loans
Right.
in order to go there when I was already planning. I had another plan altogether.
Right.
And eventually they acquiesced and gave me the full scholarship I asked for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you stuck to your guns. You're like, I'm not
I
going to take a
did.
loan out for this.
I did. Well, I ended up taking out small loans to live when I was
Yeah.
in New Haven, because I worked at Eastman, and it just took so much out of me to work and go to school at the same time. And yeah, and actually, I have something I'd like to touch on, is that I've got my first summer free this summer, because I'm having a child. My wife and I are having
Oh,
having a boy.
congrats.
Thank
Oh,
you
that's
so
so
much.
great.
And it's funny, because when I think about working, I worked all through college. I worked every summer I've worked, and I did the math. The last time I had a summer off was when I was 14 years old.
Oh
So
my
I am
gosh.
so ready to have some time off. Of course, everyone says I'm going to work more this summer than I ever have with the newborn.
Well, when's the
But
baby due?
June 3rd, so
That's a good time.
it is a good time.
We have a
Yeah,
June
have a
baby as
summer
well.
baby. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I know. Well, I was sort of like, this would be great if it's sort of built in, maternity, paternity leave for musicians, if you can
Yeah.
try and plan it and make that happen. So, yeah, it was great having June baby, although it was hot in North Carolina.
Oh, I'm sure it was hot, humid, and muggy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was really hot
Yeah.
summer. But that's so exciting for you guys. I'm really excited.
Thank you. Yeah, it should be pretty great.
And so
We
your
can't
your
wait.
wife is a pianist, and she's your pianist, obviously.
She is, well, yeah, she is my pianist, but she also coaches quite a bit. She just she did a coaching yesterday, and yeah, so she's fantastic in her own right. And we met on a gig doing the Barbara Seville, where she was the repetiteur and the assistant conductor for the show. And she's just insanely talented in
Yeah,
just about everything.
I saw a video of her singing, you guys singing together, and I was like, she
Yes.
can sing too?
I know, she's got the most beautiful voice. Actually, she's my favorite soprano. Sorry, Anna Netrebko, but my wife's number one.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sort of introduced into the opera world now because of the social media I've been doing for the North Carolina Opera. And so
Yeah.
it's just been really funny, because before like a month ago, I didn't even know who Anna Netrebko was,
Oh,
which is really
well, for those
embarrassing.
of you who
'Cause-
don't know who Anna Netrebko
Yeah.
is, it's not a problem. It's okay. But she's a really wonderful soprano who's probably the best in our business right about now.
right now, and she
And,
has like she has like 300,000 followers or more on Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, like
Well,
tons.
I have to say, followers does not a great opera singer make, though.
That's
not
true.
to be negative, just but she is legit. She
She's
deserves,
legit.
you know what? She deserves to have 3 million followers, 30 million followers. That's how talented she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would never attempt to say that the more followers you have, the better singers you are. But it's interesting to see
Yeah.
that there are a lot of Instagram sort of influencer types that are really well-known sopranos and singers.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's interesting when you look at the numbers, because it doesn't always add up for like if for people that are all on the same level, you'd think they'd have similar numbers, but they don't. And honestly, I can say that it's because those people are putting in work. Instagram is like social media is a second job for me. Blog
Yes.
posts is a third job for me. It's I have multiple jobs. It's not just I get up on stage and I sing pretty.
It's a lot of
It's
work. And I'll tell you
it's a
what,
ton of work.
when people when the singers are active on social, it makes the social media job so much better because then you have interaction and you have a connection to their audience who wants to see what they're doing, so I can tag people and then more, it's like a collective, it's like a community of people promoting the thing. And
Yeah.
that's what I've really liked about getting to know the opera community better, is that the performers really want to do their part to promote the opera while
Yeah,
they're
and you
there.
you yeah, and you can all help to create your own buzz about a show or an event or yourselves.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I have to say though, I think the coolest thing these days is that I mean, I come from the time when people would wait backstage for an autograph,
Yep.
and then take a picture with a disposable camera, and and then come back a week later and have you sign your picture, and or in the case of my Tokyo debut, they would take a picture with me before the show and then come back with it after the show, prepped and ready, which was like, big technology at the time. Anyway,
That's
but yeah,
funny.
now people no longer have to wait at the backstage door to say hello to me. They can just write me a message on
Hmm.
Instagram or on Facebook, and I just find that to be so fascinating how the world has changed
I
in
know.
that way. It's just the accessibility to artists is right at your fingertips now.
Super fast that it happened too. I mean, because
Yeah.
just a few years ago that it was. I remember waiting for my teacher backstage at Chicago Symphony.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd have to wait a half hour for him to come out after he packed up and everything just to say hey.
Exactly. Now, don't get me
So,
wrong. I still love people that wait to say hello to me, and I always take time for them. So, if you're out there and you want to say, "Hey," that's very special to me. And it's you know what? It's made it even more special because they could just go home and write me a message afterwards, but they
yeah.
chose to wait, which means that I don't know. I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you're from recently you were here, and I'm in North Carolina, as everyone should know, and you are from North Carolina.
Born and raised, absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool. So, did you have a good time at your Chapel Hill recital?
Yes, the Chapel Hill recital was great. It was wonderful because we did a recital tour where Irina, my wife, played for me, and seeing her, 5.5 months pregnant at the time, walking on stage and playing, it just melted my heart every time. So
Yeah.
it was wonderful being in Chapel Hill. I also I was named the artist in residence at UNC Chapel Hill, and so I got to work with their students for a week. And I have to say, I didn't know what to expect, but even though I didn't have a clue, my expectations were exceeded. Their singers there were fantastic, and they did a great job. Really, I was really happy and honored to be working with them.
That's amazing. So, and have you already done your concert in New York? The one, the series. I recently interviewed Andrew Owsley, who is on
Yeah,
your PR team, and
yeah,
I
he's my publicist.
yeah, and I love the concert series he created in the
Yeah, the Crip sessions.
Crips. Yeah. Did you do that
Yeah,
concert already?
we did it. We got such great feedback, and we got some really awesome. I mean, getting to dress up in a tux and my wife in her beautiful gown and take pictures in a crypt with candlelight and everything.
Mm.
It was pretty spectacular. Yeah. I have to say though, the crypt is so reverberant that my sound, I should have modified it a little bit more, but because my fortes were way too forte in that small space, so it
Really?
was,
It was
yeah,
boomy.
yeah, it was. But at the same time, I thought, this is an experience for these people that are sitting so close to me and having me sing in this echo chamber of a crypt, and so I don't know, I just went for it. It was really a fun gig.
That's cool. And probably not nearly as loud considering how loud they make rock concerts.
Yeah, well, that's not a that's a fair point, actually. That's a fair point. But just for people listening in, they should know that opera is always sung without microphones. We
Yeah.
we don't use microphones, and that's the biggest difference between opera and pop music. And that's kind of what made it so odd for me when I ended up winning a Grammy. I got up for the speech, and I'm like, I don't use microphones like
Wait a second, you
you
won a
all do.
Grammy?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was for the best opera recording in 2017.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. I should have
yeah.
I should have found that out on my research of you. I
Oh
didn't.
no, it's okay. It's all right. I didn't mean to just drop it there like in the middle of the podcast, but
No, that's
yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, no, it was great. I've got it. Well, no, it's actually in a box right now because we just moved to a new place. But yeah, it's going to go up on my mantle very soon.
That's amazing. What was the recording of?
The Ghosts of Versailles by John Corigliano. It's the third installment of the Beaumarchais trilogy of The Barber of Seville, The Marriage of Figaro, and then The Guilty Mother. It's The Guilty Mother, but it's called The Ghosts of Versailles because it's kind of this story within a story. It's really, really cool.
That
Yeah,
sounds
good
neat.
piece. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to know what you have coming up to close up the podcast. But first, I want to ask you if you have any like really pointed advice to get out there about social media or blogging or singing or anything that you just want people to leave this episode with, like hands on.
All right. If you want to pursue opera as a career, then know that singing, your voice, working on your voice and your vocal production is the most important thing. I can't tell you how many young singers know the history of the composer who wrote, who of Mozart. They can tell you what Mozart had for breakfast the morning that he wrote the overture to the to Don Giovanni. They can explain everything. They speak Italian. They know everything perfectly, musicality wise. They know the history of the show, and but then they can't make their voices go out of their heads in a way that will carry over an orchestra into a hall. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing you can do as an opera singer, is work on your voice. And the thing is, it's not that those other things aren't important. Those are incredibly important. But number one, always in your mind should be, I'm making a beautiful sound that carries well over the orchestra, and don't get bogged down too much with the other details. Learn the details, and then when you're performing and in the middle of it, forget the details.
Nice. I love that. I love that. So what do you have coming up
Well, I'm
besides
I'm
your summer
about
off?
to enter my summer off, which actually is becoming less of a summer off because I've gotten a few contracts for. So it's not a total summer off, but it's
Right.
just quick three day in and out concert sort of things. But I've got 6 more performances of La Boheme in Toronto. I'm actually flying back and forth to Toronto so that I can be with my wife at the end of the pregnancy. And so I've got 6 more performances of La Boheme coming up, and they're going to be great. We had opening night about a week ago, and then a week off in between shows. And yeah, I'm just going to go and get back with my colleagues there and give a great show to the audiences in Canada.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Lucas. I really enjoyed diving into all this stuff with you and all of your wealth of knowledge for social media and blogging, and also just your advice for singers, because people need to hear it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's a process. So, I mean, it's better to post something than nothing, really. If you just tell
Yes.
yourself that, just post something and make sure it stays on brand or sub brand, and you'll be fine.
I know. I think it's just getting started that's the trouble, and
It
once
is.
once you get going, it's not that big of a deal after all.
Yeah. Well, also, people need to know, just real quick, I'll end on one thing, which
Yeah,
is that it takes about a year and a half to 2 years to gain traction. And
absolutely.
so you have to be ready to put in work, a lot of work, for a year and a half to 2 years without much reward. But I tell you,
Hmm.
there is gold at the end of that rainbow. There's a pot of gold. So just keep on going with it and stay on brand, and you'll evolve into it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucas.
You got it. Thank you, Tracy. It was nice chatting with you.
Great chatting. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and you've been listening to Crushing Classical Podcast. You can follow Crushing Classical on Instagram and Facebook at Crushing Classical. If you haven't yet, you can go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review. Your review helps others to find these conversations. Thank you so much for listening.